been around a little while, you may be curious about how WFM creates our volume and staffing plan.
Have you ever wondered why some months have more OPA or time off available than others? We wanted to take a few minutes to share a little of the behind-the-scenes action and hopefully answer some of the questions you may have.
Simply put, workforce management is the art and science of getting the right number of trained agents in the right place at the right time to answer customer contacts within service level. A balanced WFM approach would include long-term planning, short-term forecasting, scheduling, real-time management, and reporting.
Let's take a deep dive into the long-range forecast and capacity plan. In its simplest form, the capacity plan is used to predict how many people we need each month compared to how many people we plan to have on staff. Our goal is to take somewhat of a Goldilocks approach. Ideally, we would get the staffing just right. This means not carrying too many or too few team members, and also staffing up and down throughout the year as our customer calling patterns change.
The capacity plan is one of the core inputs to the quarterly budget process and acts as a guide to predict staffing needs and ultimately our overall costs well into the future. The capacity plan is constantly evolving. WFM meets weekly with other key stakeholders and decision makers to review our current performance against plan and make adjustments on the fly as necessary. These meetings are referred to as the capacity plan review.
There are some key inputs that go into the capacity plan. We will take a few minutes to review each of them in detail. You may want to take notes. There will be a quiz at the end.
Now pay close attention to this next part and remember, the capacity plan's primary goal is to determine how many people we need to staff each queue at the desired service level. The first and one of the most important inputs into the plan is our service level goal.
Service level is simply defined as X% of contacts or calls answered in Y seconds. As an example, we may want to answer 80% of all calls offered in 20 seconds or less. Another example could be 70% in 30 seconds or less. Service level is determined by establishing an acceptable abandonment goal, then analyzing customer behavior to find the perfect balance between wait time and abandonment percent.
Different lines of business set different goals for service level and abandonment percent based on many factors, including our customers' tolerance for wait time and budgetary constraints. Since there isn't a straightforward calculation for service level when planning at the monthly level, we use occupancy as our service factor in the CAP plan. We will learn more about this later on.
The next two inputs go hand in hand and when combined determine our overall workload. Number 1, calls offered, aka the call forecast. Calls offered is the number of calls we anticipate receiving in any given month. We use historical information to help predict the future. This typically means analyzing the last several years' monthly volumes, assessing whether the channel is increasing or decreasing, and layering in either a rate of growth or a rate of decline. We have many different sophisticated statistical models and tools to assist in this process. Some examples would be time series analysis and regression analysis, or exponential triple smoothing, point estimation, and as of recent, an advanced autoregressive machine learning algorithm.
Mouthful. Although these methods are good starting points, we test multiple models at the same time and determine which will be the most accurate. Once we have compiled all the known factors, we meet with numerous other teams to gather intelligence and any outside influences. These additional factors are referred to as externalities. Even the most sophisticated mathematical forecast models are rendered useless without the aid of a human to gather and quantify these events and abnormalities.
Other factors taken into consideration are customer call-in rates, customers receiving price increases and roll-off campaigns, changes to the IVR and call routing strategy, marketing efforts, NFL season, pay-per-views and special events, holidays and network premieres, just to name a few. The list can go on ad infinitum.
AHT, or average handle time, is calculated by summing up talk time, hold time, and after-call work in seconds, then divided by the number of calls handled. When we multiply calls by AHT and divide that by 3,600 seconds, which is the number of seconds in an hour, we arrive at our workload hours. The next main component of our requirement calculation is occupancy.
Occupancy is the measurement of how busy the queue actually is. This is not to be confused with agent utilization, compliance, or SFT. Occupancy is calculated by dividing the sum of our busy time, calls times AHT, into the sum of our staff time, calls times AHT plus time unavailable, waiting for a call. Larger queues tend to be more efficient, and as a result, can be busier and still achieve service level, while smaller queues must maintain a higher level of availability in order to meet the same service level goal. For example, our sales queue receives more than 300,000 calls a month. We can run an 89% occupancy and still meet our service level and abandon goals. The Spanish queue, or transfer COE, on the other hand, may only be able to run 70 or 75% occupancy while handling less than 20,000 calls a month.
This phenomenon is known as economics of scale. Basically, the more volume a queue takes, the busier they can be while meeting the service level. There is a limit, however. At a certain point, agents reach a level of fatigue. When we are too busy, we see AHT increase, absenteeism spikes, and overall agent satisfaction decreases. We strive to balance the queue busyness with agent satisfaction and overall efficiency.
Lastly, we need to account for all of our non-customer facing time, or shrinkage. Shrinkage is made up of many different scheduled or unscheduled events. This includes, but is not limited to, meetings, coachings, huddles, vacation time, unplanned time, breaks, personal time, etc. Most queues run between 28 and 34% shrinkage each month. This also varies depending on the amount of OPA that needs to be completed as well as budgetary goals. Once we are comfortable that we have determined all of our known assumptions, we blend all of these inputs together and apply an industry-recognized formula to determine our requirements. Now that you have a deep understanding of what goes on to the requirement calculation, let's see how many of you can determine how many FTE we need.
Here is the calculation for determining FTE requirements. Step 1. We multiply calls times handle time and divide that by 3,600 seconds. This equals our base workload hours. In step 2, we take our base workload hours and divide that by occupancy. This equals our partially loaded workload hours. In step 3, we take our partially loaded workload hours divided by 1 minus shrink. Pay extra special attention to that last formula. You're going to want to notice those brackets. This equals the fully loaded workload hours. And in the final step, we take our fully loaded workload hours divided by the average number of monthly hours each FTE works. Now let's put 5 minutes on the clock and see how many of you can determine the requirement based on the information we've provided.
This brings us to our next step in the capacity planning process. The hard part is done. We've projected our call volume, our HT, shrinkage, and occupancy each month for the next 18 months and have calculated our monthly requirements. Now we need to determine whether we have the right number of agents employed to hit that sweet spot I talked about earlier.
The CAP plan keeps a running total of current staff we have in place at the jump-off point. We subtract assumed attrition, promotions, transfers in and out, agents going in and out of loan, and layer in new hire classes, making sure to account for the length of training as well as the length of first officer school. What we're left with is net staff. Our goal is to be plus or minus 5% each month. This gives us enough wiggle room to open overtime, reduce or increase OPA, offer additional time off for VTO, and implement a number of other strategies to bridge the gap and ensure we're able to meet our service level, abandon, and of course, our revenue goals. We hope you found this exercise entertaining or at least informative.
If you want to learn more about WFM and how and why we do things, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help.